Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wesley.
My name is Eric.
Tonight, we're presenting a very important aspect of humanity.
Yes, today we'll be giving a comparative presentation on the funeral rites and customs of Taiwan and the United States. The reason we chose this subject is because death is something that all humanity must face, regardless of your belief, culture, or your creed. For many people, the subject of death is an uncomfortable subject to talk about. But from a humanist perspective, it is something that we must talk about. And so, we hope that through tonight's presentation, we will be able to offer further insight into how two cultures deal with the subject of death, with the journey's end.
Let's start with Taiwan. In recent decades, society in Taiwan has become more and more diverse. And the Taiwanese people are still very religious, and they believe in Taoism and Buddhism. Therefore, they practice funeral rites and customs in accordance with the traditions of these two religions. Today, we will take a closer look at the traditional rites and customs in Taiwan. When a loved one is close to death, the family will choose the place and time for him or her, either at hospital or at home. After he or she has passed away, this deceased will then be sent to a funeral home and refrigerated. Taiwanese people believe that, after death, the spirits of the deceased will wander around the human world, unaware that they have passed away. As they wander around aimlessly, they may be tempted by evil spirits and led to hell. In order to prevent this from happening, the family will hire some monks or nuns to chant for the deceased. This is called ritual chanting. Traditionally, ritual chanting is performed every 7th day from the time of death. The very first ritual chanting is performed on the 7th day after the death, and the other 6 will be performed on a weekly basis. Nowadays, due to time restraints imposed by modern life, the 7 ritual chantings have been cut down to 3. The ritual chanting serves 2 purposes. First, it serves to inform the spirits of the deceased that they have passed away. Second, ritual chanting serves to disperse evil spirits and lead the spirits of the deceased to the west, or otherwise known as paradise. After the ritual chanting, the family will burn paper money, which is in form of paper lotus or sai. After a month of ritual chanting, the family will print out the obituary notice and send them out to the friends and relatives of the deceased. On the obituary notice, the family will provide a time and place for the visitation. In Taiwan, there are 2 kinds of visitations, private and public. Private visitations are only for close friends and relatives, and the public visitations are open to any acquaintances of the deceased. The funeral service comes after the visitation. Nowadays, more and more people choose cremation over burial as the price of land gets more and more exorbitant in Taiwan. When the deceased is cremated, the ash will be put into an urn and sent to a pagoda. Every year, the family will visit the site for 4 times. Okay, now Eric will present the rites and customs of a traditional American funeral. Let's welcome Eric.
Thank you, Wesley. As you all know, the United States comprises peoples from various cultural backgrounds, so there's technically no standard or singular way of conducting a funeral. But for the sake of comparison, I'll be focusing on the traditional American funeral, as well as the customs that go along with it. So generally, a traditional American funeral is divided into 3 phases. There's the visitation, the burial service. All 3 are generally conducted within days of each other. So once someone has passed away, they're either embalmed or refrigerated for a certain amount of time until the date and time for the funeral is set. Once the date has been set, the process begins. So the first phase is called the visitation, or more commonly known as the viewing or the wake. At this time, the deceased is placed on display in a casket, either open or closed, depending on the preference of the family. At this time, close family and friends come together in a social gathering to pay their respects. This is usually held at a funeral home, in someone's house, or at a church. Afterwards comes the funeral service. The funeral service at the funeral service, usually close family, friends, or clergymen, if religious, go before attendees to give a eulogy, or sing hymns, recite poetry, or recite spiritual texts or verses from the Holy Bible, for example. Before a funeral service concludes, all the attendees are generally allowed one last opportunity to view the deceased before the casket is permanently closed, if not already. After the funeral service concludes, the close family and friends then carry the casket outside. These people are called pallbearers. The pallbearers then take the casket and place it inside the funeral vehicle, which is called the hearse. The hearse then sets off for the burial site, followed by a procession of cars, which is generally known as the funeral procession. The last phase is the burial service, which is usually conducted by a religious leader from the deceased church. During this time, the religious leader leads everybody in scripture reading or in a hymn. As the casket is lowered into the ground, the attendees are then are lined up single file and walk past the casket and the family members, giving their words of comfort and paying their respects. In regards to American funeral attire, people usually dress somberly and semi-formal, which means gray, black, or dark colors. It is generally considered distasteful if you wear colorful clothing. Women sometimes wear hats with veils to cover their faces.
So now that we have presented both sides, let us compare them. For Taiwanese funerals, they are heavily influenced by Taoism and Buddhism. And Taiwanese people believe in the afterlife, where the spirits of the deceased continue to live in a society. Therefore, paper money, ritual chanting are important elements when it comes to the funeral. As the monks chant the verses, the spirits of the deceased will be led onto the right track to the west. And with the paper money we burn for them, they are able to live a good life in the other world.
In a traditional American funeral, however, they're more influenced by Christianity. Psalm 23, which is the verse I cited in the beginning of this presentation, is one of the most commonly cited verses at traditional American funerals. Usually, people believe that the spirit of the deceased are taken up to heaven by angels to be with God, where they live in eternal peace. And the bereaved family members and friends are comforted with words, saying that they will one day see their loved ones again in heaven.
Despite such drastic differences, there is one key similarity. Whether it be a traditional Taiwanese funeral or American funeral, both cultures aim to commemorate and celebrate the life of the deceased.
When our loved ones have passed away, it doesn't matter where we are, we all mourn, and we're all in great pain, whether it's externally expressed or internally concealed. In this, we are all united in our humanity. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you for your attention.